Have you ever landed on a website and just felt completely lost? Or, on the flip side, have you ever felt like a page was somehow reading your mind?
Oh, absolutely. Where you just feel compelled to click buy.
Right. And you wonder, what is that invisible force that makes you pull out your credit card? Or, conversely, what makes you just run away and close the tab?
It is definitely not an accident, I can tell you that.
Yeah, and that is exactly what we are unpacking today. Welcome to this deep dive into the digital blueprint of human behavior.
It's a fascinating topic.
It really is. We're going to be using excerpts from the groundbreaking book, Persuasive Online Copywriting, along with the Persuasion Architecture white paper. These are by Bryan and Jeffrey Eisenberg and Lisa T. Davis.
Some really foundational texts.
Exactly. And our mission today is to explore how the age-old art of human persuasion translates and, honestly, sometimes completely fails to translate into the digital world.
Which is something that affects literally all of us.
Yes. So whether you are an entrepreneur trying to sell a product, a creative sharing your work, or just, someone trying to understand why you bought that random thing online at 2 a.m.
We've all been there.
We have. Understanding how words and web architecture shape behavior is basically a modern superpower. But to understand where we are now, we kind of have to look back at the chaotic early days of the internet.
Right, the early 2000s.
Yeah, specifically the dot-com crash. Because in the year 2000, trillions of dollars vanished into thin air.
It was a bloodbath.
It was. And the smartest minds in tech, Wall Street analysts, media conglomerates, they all looked at the smoldering wreckage and boldly declared that the internet marketing industry was basically dead.
Which is so funny to think about now.
I know. They thought the digital experiment was just a failure. But a few perceptive copywriters and analysts, like our authors, looked at that exact same wreckage and realized everyone was blaming the wrong thing.
Right, because it wasn't the technology that failed.
Exactly. It was the fact that in the rush to get online, we had completely forgotten how human beings actually make decisions.
It's honestly one of the greatest misdiagnoses in business history. When the bubble burst, the immediate reaction was just, well, let's blame the medium.
Right, like the internet itself was the problem.
Exactly. The assumption was that the internet just wasn't a viable place for complex human commerce or, deep engagement. But the reality, which a very small group of visionaries understood at the time, was that the internet didn't change human nature.
It really didn't.
No. It simply provided this hyper-accelerated, highly unforgiving new medium for it. And to really understand the mechanics of digital persuasion today, you have to start by looking at that exact moment in 2002.
Because that's when they published the introduction to their new edition, right?
Yes, right in the shadow of that dot-com collapse. And while the press was writing obituaries for e-commerce, they made this really controversial argument. They said the internet isn't dead. It is simply a baby born premature.
A premature baby. That biological metaphor is striking, especially given the panic of that era.
It's a great way to frame it.
It is, because if you think about it, a premature baby isn't a failed life. It's a life that possesses all the genetic potential for greatness, but it's just been forced into the world before its systems are ready to survive on their own.
Right. It needs help.
Yeah, it requires a highly controlled, deeply supportive environment, an incubator to eventually thrive.
And the authors were pointing out that the technology of the early web, the servers, the HTML, the hyperlinking, that was the premature baby. It was brilliant, but the application of it was vastly immature.
Businesses just thought existing online was enough.
Exactly. Having a flashing banner or a clunky digital shopping cart, they thought that was the whole job. They believed the technology itself was the persuasion.
Which is a huge mistake.
A massive mistake. What was desperately missing from the incubator was the application of fundamental human psychology. They argued that technology alone cannot solve a marketing failure if the underlying communication just completely ignores how people actually buy things.
Okay, but let me push back on that a little bit, because businesses in the 90s and early 2000s, they weren't run by idiots.
No, not at all.
They had decades of highly successful print, television, and radio advertising experience. So are the authors saying these massive companies just forgot how to sell overnight?
Well, no, they didn't forget how to sell. The problem is that they tried to port their traditional sales model directly into an environment that fundamentally rejected it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and this brings us to a concept the authors call the basic exchange, which is really the bedrock of everything we're going to talk about today.
It's a basic exchange.
Right. It highlights this massive inherent conflict of interest between a business and a customer. Because selling is how a business achieves its goals, but buying is how a customer achieves their goals.
And those goals are definitely not aligned.
There's entirely distinct. They operate on completely different timelines. A business operates on an internal sales process.
Right, like a funnel.
Exactly. They need to prospect a lead, build rapport, qualify that lead, present the product, handle objections, and close the deal. It's this rigid, linear timeline designed to serve, quarterly earnings and internal metrics.
Makes sense for the business.
Sure, but here is the critical insight. That internal sales process means absolutely nothing to the customer.
Nothing at all.
It is not the customer's buying process. The customer operates on their own chaotic timeline. They are driven by their own highly personal anxieties, immediate needs, and private desires.
When you lay it out like that, it sounds less like a transaction and more like a hostage negotiation.
Oh, this is a good analogy.
Think about it. You have two parties sitting across from each other, but they have completely different priorities. The business is like a SWAT team commander. They have a strict protocol, establish contact, secure the perimeter, get the hostage out by 5 p.m.
Right, check all the boxes.
But the customer on the other side, they don't care about the commander's protocol. They have their own set of demands, their own timeline, their own deep-seated anxieties.
Exactly.
And if the negotiator just reads off their internal protocol clipboard, like, listen, step 3 is that you release the hostage, the communication breaks down immediately. There's no connection.
That is an incredibly accurate way to visualize the friction. Because in the era of television or print, the audience was captive.
You couldn't easily escape the commercial break.
Exactly. A business could afford to be that rigid negotiator because the customer couldn't easily leave the room. You could basically force them to sit through your 30-second presentation during a sitcom. But the internet destroyed the captive audience.
Completely.
Online, the customer's always just one single click away from goodbye.
Yeah.
The power dynamic inverted completely.
Like they have all the leverage now.
They do. So if a website tries to force a user into a self-serving, linear sales process without addressing the user's independent buying process, the user doesn't just politely sit there and listen.
No, they hit the back button.
Immediately. The internet exposed lazy marketing that relied on captivity rather than actual persuasion.
Which raises a pretty terrifying question for anyone running a website today. If you look at your own company's homepage right now, is it actually facilitating the customer's buying process, or is it just a digital brochure shouting your internal sales process at them?
And unfortunately, it's usually the latter.
We still see this everywhere. It's like, here's our mission statement, here are our core values, here is our product matrix.
It's all about the business.
Exactly. It's a completely one-sided exchange, like a terrible first date where one person only talks about themselves.
Right. If you don't listen to what the other person wants, there will be no second date. So this shift from shouting to conversing, from enforcing a sales process to surrendering to a buying process, it has to start at the molecular level of your digital presence.
Meaning the text itself.
Yes, it starts with the actual words you use. And this leads us to what the source text identifies as a fatal misunderstanding in the digital world, which is the false dichotomy between copy and content.
Oh man, I hear this debate constantly in marketing meetings.
Oh, I'm sure you do.
There's this deeply ingrained idea that copy is the aggressive, sales-heavy text, the landing page, the call to action, the big red buy now button.
Oh, that persuasive stuff.
And then content is viewed as the nice, helpful, educational fluff, the blog post, the About Us page, the FAQ section. But the authors argue that online, treating these as two separate things is an absolute disaster.
It is a disaster because it assumes that only certain parts of your website need to be persuasive.
Which makes no sense.
It makes no sense at all. The authors are definitive on this point. Online, all words must fuel the persuasive process. All content is copy, and all copy is content.
Wow, so there's no distinction.
None. Every single syllable on your screen is either moving the customer closer to their goal, or it is actively creating friction that pushes them away.
But hold on, if every word is copy and all copy is meant to persuade, that puts a massive burden on the writer.
It definitely raises the stakes.
Yeah, because who exactly are we trying to persuade? If a company has, say, 50,000 unique visitors hitting their site every month, coming from different countries, different industries, different demographics.
Right, the huge mix of people.
How can the words possibly persuade all of them at once?
Well, they can't. And that is the secret.
They can't.
No. To answer your question, the authors bring in this brilliant piece of advice from the legendary novelist John Steinbeck.
Okay, what did Steinbeck say?
He famously said, "Your audience is one single reader." He advised writers to pick out one real or imagined person and write exclusively to them.
Just one person.
Yes. In digital persuasion, this is known as the rule of one.
The rule of one. I mean, from a corporate perspective, that sounds completely counterintuitive, almost irresponsible, honestly.
I know it does.
You're paying thousands of dollars for web traffic, and you are going to intentionally ignore 99% of them to speak to one person.
It feels irresponsible until you understand the psychology of intimacy.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Think about it. When a business tries to write to a crowd of 50,000 people, what happens to the language?
It gets really bland.
Exactly. It naturally becomes diluted, broad, and inherently corporate. You start using words like utilize, synergy, leverage.
The worst words are valued customers.
Yes. You write to a demographic, not a human.
Mm-hmm.
But human beings do not make decisions as a demographic. They make decisions in isolation, staring at a screen.
That is such a good point. We are always alone with our devices.
Right. So when you write to one specific person, you are forced to use the word you. You speak to their individual fears. You address their highly specific hopes.
It feels personal.
Intimacy builds trust. And trust is the absolute prerequisite for any persuasive exchange.
The text gives a highly practical example of this with a grant application scenario, which I think perfectly illustrates how content and copy blend to serve this rule of one.
Let's hear it.
Imagine a user comes to a website because they are looking to secure grant money for a charitable cause. That is their sole goal. The short, punchy text on the homepage has an immediate job. It must answer the user's underlying anxiety, which is just, am I in the right place?
Right, establishing relevance immediately.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It has to quickly persuade them not to hit the back button. But then once they click through, they're confronted with long, dense, highly technical text outlining the legal eligibility requirements for the grant.
Now, conventional corporate thinking would label that short homepage text as copy.
And the long legal text as content.
Exactly. But the authors argue both are highly persuasive. The short text persuades them to stay, but the long text persuades them that the organization is legitimate, authoritative, and that the user can actually win this grant if they follow the steps.
So it's building trust.
Yes. The tone of that dense eligibility criteria is just as critical to the user's buying process as a headline on the homepage. They are both doing persuasive work.
I understand the mechanism there, but I really have to test this rule of one because the fear of alienation in marketing is so strong.
Well, it's the number one fear.
Right. So if I take Steinbeck's advice and I write my homepage copy speaking directly to a 35-year-old middle manager named Sarah who is stressed about formatting Excel spreadsheets on a Sunday night.
A very specific persona.
Very specific. I use her exact pain points. Won't I completely alienate the 45-year-old marketing director who visits the site looking to solve a totally different problem?
It is the most common fear in copywriting, like I said.
Yeah.
But the authors address it beautifully by leaning into narrative psychology.
Narrative psychology.
Yes. The core principle is that specificity breeds universality.
Specificity breeds universality.
Exactly. The text emphasizes that specific details are far more believable and far more engaging than generalities. When you use highly specific details, you gain what authors call the willing suspension of disbelief.
Oh, like when you watch a great movie.
Exactly like that. If a movie is super vague about its characters to try and appeal to everyone, nobody cares about them.
Right, it's boring.
But if you write universally in marketing, saying something like, our software helps everyone save time and be more productive,
It slides right off the brain. It's a platitude.
nobody believes you. But if you write, this will save you the 3 hours you currently spend every Sunday night manually reformatting pivot tables while your family watches a movie without you.
Ouch, that hurts.
Something incredible happens, right? The specific person who does that nods in visceral agreement. They feel seen.
But what about the other guy?
Interestingly, the 45-year-old marketing director who doesn't use Excel, but who spends her Sunday nights answering emails instead of being with her family, she still relates to the feeling of that highly specific pain point.
Wow, okay, so they connect to the emotion underneath the specific detail.
Exactly. The specificity proves that you understand human suffering, which makes the reader trust that your solution is real.
That is profound. You don't captivate people by making watered-down statements about stuff that matters to you. You captivate them by making powerful, specific statements about the hyper-specific reality they live in.
Yes, it's all about them.
It's the ultimate application of the YYMVM principle, right? What's in it for me?
The only question that matters.
That is the only question the customer is subconsciously asking when they look at your screen.
And once you know who that one person is and you know exactly how your product answers their what's in it, for me, you face the next architectural challenge. Well, you have all these persuasive elements, but how do you organize them? The authors argue that persuasive copy cannot be random. You cannot just throw benefits at a wall and hope they stick.
You need a structure.
The writing requires systematic, coherent intentionality. It must flow, and it must reveal the gestalt.
The gestalt. Let's define that in this context, because it's a word that gets thrown around in design a lot. But here it has a very specific meaning for the towel itself.
Right. In digital persuasion, the gestalt is the complete holistic picture the user forms in their mind about your product and your brand.
The big picture.
It is the realization that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. If you just list bullet points of features, you're just giving them parts.
Right.
But if you structure those words to lead the reader on a psychological journey, they suddenly see the gestalt. They see how this product fundamentally changes their life.
So how do we build that?
To achieve this, you need a rigid underlying structure. And to provide that structure, the authors reference Joseph Sugarman's linear flow.
Sugarman. He was one of the legendary direct response copywriters.
Yes.
An absolute legend.
And his flow acts almost like a neurological wireframe for persuasion. It's a 9-step journey. And I don't want to just list these steps. I want to actually build a scenario to see how this works in practice.
I love that idea. Let's do it.
Let's say we are trying to write a landing page for a new, highly expensive, AI-powered smart mattress.
Okay, a high-ticket item.
Exactly. How does Sugarman's flow dictate we build this? Walk me through the steps.
Okay, step 1 is to open strongly to elicit interest.
So no talking about foam density yet.
No, absolutely not. You start with the core human desire. You say something like, you haven't truly slept in 5 years.
Hooking the specific reader by validating their exhaustion. I like it. Step 2 is develop the drama.
This is where you agitate the problem. Every morning, you wake up feeling like you ran a marathon. Your back aches, your focus at work is shattered by 2 p.m., and you are snapping at your kids.
Oh man, you are making it hurt.
The lack of deep sleep isn't just making you tired. It is slowly eroding your quality of life. You are forcing the reader to confront the real cost of their problem.
Okay, the drama is developed. They're definitely feeling the pain. Step 3 is explain why your solution is different.
Now you introduce the mechanism. Unlike traditional memory foam that traps heat and ignores your body's shifts, our mattress uses an integrated AI thermal grid that adjusts temperature based on your REM cycle.
So you aren't just saying it's better.
No, you are explaining the logical mechanism of why it's different.
Makes sense. Step 4 is explain how to use it, which sounds a bit obvious for a mattress, but I assume it's about removing friction.
Yes, exactly. You literally just plug it into the wall, download the app, and go to sleep. The sensors do the rest.
Reassuring them that this new AI thing isn't going to require a degree in computer science.
Right, keep it simple.
Step 5 is elaborate on the unique benefits.
This is where you really pile on the value. Not only will you fall asleep faster, but our data shows users experience a 40% increase in deep restorative sleep. Imagine waking up at 6 a.m. before your alarm, feeling completely recharged.
I'm ready to buy it right now. But step 6 is justify the purchase, which is crucial because this is an expensive item.
Absolutely crucial. Yes, it costs $3,000. But what is 5 years of peak performance at work worth to you? What is having the energy to play with your children worth?
Wow, framing it around the life benefit.
Exactly. You spend a third of your life in bed. It is an investment in your waking hours.
Step 7 is identify the lasting value.
This isn't a mattress you replace in 5 years. The software updates continuously, meaning your bed actually gets smarter and better at reading your biometrics the longer you own it.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Step 8 is address any service concerns.
We offer a 100-night sleep trial, free white glove delivery, and a 10-year warranty. If you don't love it, we come pick it up for free.
You're removing every final layer of risk.
You have to.
And finally, step 9, ask for the order.
Click here to design your sleep profile and claim your mattress today.
When we walk through it like that, I mean, you can literally feel the psychological momentum building.
It's powerful, isn't it?
It is. Because if you skip a step, like if you go straight from you are tired to it costs $3,000, the entire structure collapses.
The user experiences massive cognitive friction.
Right. But within that beautiful 9-step structure, the authors introduce a rule that I think most modern marketers completely violate on a daily basis.
Oh, without a doubt.
Before you write a single word of that flow, you must consciously choose your perspective.
Yes, the choice between intellect and emotion.
Tell me about that.
The text points out that you must define your primary perspective and rigidly adhere to it. Intellectual copy presents new logical information to lead the reader to a new, calculated conclusion.
Okay, very fact-based.
Right. Emotional copy, on the other hand, tells readers what they already instinctively know to be true, but it subtly shifts how they feel about that information.
And the unforgivable sin, according to the text, is vacillating between the two. Why is that so destructive? I ask because I see companies trying to do this constantly.
They do. They think they're being clever.
Right. They want to appeal to the heart and the brain simultaneously in the exact same paragraph. They think they're covering all their bases.
The reason it is destructive comes down to cognitive load.
Cognitive load.
Yes. When a writer tries to be everything to everyone, they lose the definitive boundaries that make a message strong. When a reader is engaged in a deeply emotional argument, they are operating in a state of feeling. Their defenses are down.
We're invested.
But if you suddenly jerk them into a cold, intellectual list of statistics, you shatter the spell. You force their brain to shift gears from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex, and in that moment of friction, the momentum dies.
They wake up from the trance.
Exactly. They remember they're being sold to, and they leave.
I want to visualize this friction because I think a lot of people make this mistake. Think about a high-end car commercial.
Great example.
If the ad starts by appealing to your deep emotional need to protect your family, right? Showing a mother driving through a torrential rainstorm with her newborn in the back seat, that is pure, visceral emotion.
Very emotional.
The perspective is established. But if the voiceover suddenly drops that narrative and abruptly switches to a dry, intellectual list of engine torque specifications and aerodynamic drag coefficients without connecting them back to the child's safety,
The emotional thread just snaps.
yes, the viewer feels completely disjointed.
Exactly. If the writers wanted to introduce the intellectual engine specs, they would need to maintain the emotional perspective by framing them correctly.
How would they do that?
They would have to say something like, the 400 horsepower engine ensures that when you need to merge onto a chaotic highway to get your family home, you have the power to do it safely.
Ah, tying the spec to the emotion.
The structure and the perspective must remain completely unified. If you are emotional, stay emotional. If you are intellectual, stay intellectual.
And the beauty of this framework is that it applies far beyond just a website. If you are pitching an idea in a boardroom, you have to decide, is this an intellectual pitch about market share or an emotional pitch about our company's legacy?
Right, pick a lane.
Even writing a critical email to your boss to ask for a raise, are you appealing to the intellectual metrics of your performance or the emotional value of your loyalty?
It changes the whole tone of the email.
It does. As the authors show, this structure isn't restrictive. It is a roadmap for human communication.
A roadmap is the perfect analogy. So you now have the exact route mapped out. You've got the BYFM principle, the rule of one, Sugarman's flow, a unified perspective.
We're ready to build the site?
Well, having the perfect map is only half the battle.
Oh, here we go.
Because we now have to account for the physical reality of how human beings actually interact with digital screens. And the science shows that it is fundamentally different from how we interact with paper.
I am so glad we are getting to this because this is the moment in the source material where the entire paradigm basically shifts. The text dives into the findings of the Stanford Pointer Project.
A huge landmark study.
Yeah, it was this massive eye-tracking study that analyzed exactly how people read online. And the findings completely inverted decades of assumed knowledge about layout and design.
They really did.
Right.
Because in the physical world, like when you open a newspaper or a magazine, our eyes naturally gravitate toward the largest visual elements first.
The pictures.
We look at the big, glossy photographs, then we look at the bold headlines, and finally we read the text. That is how print layout has worked for a century.
It makes sense.
But the Stanford Pointer researchers found that online, this behavior is completely reversed.
Reversed.
Yes. Readers go for the text first. They look at captions, they read summaries, they scan bullet points, and they look at the graphics later, or sometimes. Not at all.
Okay, hold on. I have to stop you there because I am looking at this data and it feels like a massive contradiction to everything we just spent the last 20 minutes talking about.
I know, it sounds crazy.
We just meticulously crafted a 9-step, deeply emotional, beautifully structured narrative about a smart mattress, and now you are telling me that the user is just blindly scanning the page, looking at captions, and ignoring the carefully chosen images.
Yes, initially.
If they are just skimming text, why did we write the deep copy? Are they even reading it?
This is the essential nuance that separates amateur web design from master-level digital persuasion.
Yeah.
You have to understand why they are scanning.
Why are they doing it?
The authors explain that when a user lands on a new web page, they are not there to read. They are on a preliminary scouting mission.
A scouting mission, like they are assessing a threat.
In a way, yeah. Online, users operate with a constant underlying hum of anxiety.
Anxiety about what?
It's an anxiety about being in the wrong place, being scammed, or simply wasting their precious time in an infinitely vast digital ocean. Scanning is a psychological defense mechanism against information overload.
That makes so much sense.
They are frantically looking for visual and textual anchors that signal, you are safe here, and this page contains the answer you are looking for.
So the design takeaways from the text are entirely focused on facilitating that rapid orientation.
Exactly.
The authors say your logo needs to be at the top left to instantly confirm identity. You need clear, predictable global navigation so they know how to escape if they need to.
Right. Show them the exits.
And most importantly, you need a prominent, instantly readable value proposition. You have to give the user what they need to know exactly when and where they need to know it. They call this the point of action.
Yes. And to answer your previous objection about the long copy skimming, is strictly for orientation. It is step one.
Ah.
Once the user scans the page and sees the logo, the clear navigation, and a value proposition that aligns with their needs, that underlying anxiety drops.
They feel safe.
And only when the anxiety drops do they transition from skimmers into readers.
Yeah.
That is the moment they engage with your deep, 9-step structured copy.
I see.
The deep copy closes the sale, but the scannable architecture secures the opportunity.
It's like arriving at a massive crowded party where you don't know the host very well.
Oh, perfect analogy.
Right. When you first walk in the door, you do not instantly launch into a deep, vulnerable conversation with the first person you bump into. You are anxious, you scan the room.
You look for the snacks.
Exactly. You look for the kitchen to see where the drinks are, you check the exits, you scan the faces to see if you recognize any friends, you figure out the vibe of the room, you orient yourself.
Yep.
And then, only after you feel comfortable, only after the anxiety of arrival dissipates, do you settle down in a corner for a deep 30-minute conversation.
Exactly. A successful website has to facilitate both the initial panic scan and the deep, comfortable conversation.
And the authors point out that this scouting behavior doesn't just start on your homepage. It starts before they even reach your site. It starts at the search engine. They map this entire user journey to the ATIS process.
Yes, ATIS.
Attention, interest, desire, action, satisfaction. How does that map to a search engine?
Think about the mechanics of a search query. When a user types a keyword into Google, they're giving you their attention.
Okay.
Your search result title, that little blue link, must capture their interest amidst a dozen other options.
Right, because there's so much competition.
Then, the short meta description beneath the link must ignite their desire to learn more.
We can on it.
They take action by clicking the link, and finally, when they land on your site, the page must deliver immediate satisfaction by proving they made the right choice.
And if it doesn't?
If any single step in that chain fails, the anxiety spikes, the trust breaks, and they bounce right back to the search results.
This constant realization that the customer is in total, absolute control of the flow, that they are voluntary participants who demand orientation and who will ruthlessly punish any site that ignores their buying process. This brings us to the ultimate synthesis of these entire texts.
The big idea.
This is the grand theory that ties all these concepts together, persuasion architecture.
This is where the authors elevate web design from mere graphic layout to structural psychology. The term persuasion architecture is just a brilliant metaphor.
Let's break it down.
In the physical world, a building must serve 3 primary functions. First, structural needs. The foundation must be strong, the roof can't collapse. In digital terms, your code must work. The site must load fast.
Table stakes.
Second, purposeful needs. A hospital is designed differently than a nightclub because they serve different purposes. Your e-commerce site shouldn't look like a blog.
Makes sense.
But crucially, The building must serve the behavioral needs of its inhabitants.
How people actually move through the space.
Exactly. A master architect doesn't just build walls, they build pathways that naturally guide human movement. A website must do the exact same thing. It must be a digital environment engineered to guide behavior.
To build this persuasion architecture, the text says we have to deeply understand 3 inherent traits of digital prospects. Number 1, which we've hammered home today, they are voluntary participants. They are not captive.
Right, they can leave at any second.
Number 2, they have a propensity to buy. I think this is a huge realization. They didn't type the search query by accident. They aren't browsing your site for their health.
No, they want something.
They're actively looking to solve a problem. They want you to convince them. And number 3, they have distinct personalities and learning styles.
And to address those varied personalities and build an architecture that actually works, a business cannot just guess. They have to go through a rigorous internal audit that the authors call the uncovery process.
Uncovery, I like that word.
This is where a business must self-disclose and figure out what it actually needs to articulate to the customer.
Yeah.
And to facilitate this uncovery, the authors use a fascinating psychological framework called the Johari window.
Oh, I am obsessed with the Johari window. It was originally created by 2 psychologists, Joseph Luft and Harrington Ingham, right?
Yes.
They used it to understand self-awareness and human interaction. It divides awareness into 4 quadrants: the open area, the blind area, the hidden area, and the unknown area. How does the text apply this psychological tool to business marketing?
It applies it by contrasting what a business knows about its own product versus what the customer actually sees and understands.
Okay, let's go through the quadrants.
The open quadrant contains things both the business and the customer know, like we sell shoes, you want to buy shoes.
Very straightforward.
The hidden quadrant contains things the business knows, but intentionally keeps from the customer, like profit margins or supply chain issues.
Right, behind the scenes stuff.
The unknown quadrant contains things neither party knows, like how a future economic crash will affect the industry.
But the danger zone, the place where marketing basically goes to die, is the blind quadrant.
Exactly. The blind quadrant contains things the business knows implicitly about their product's incredible value, but the customer does not know or understand.
There's a disconnect.
And the authors use this incredible phrase to describe this phenomenon. They say, you can't read the label from inside the bottle.
Oh, I love that. That is the perfect way to describe the curse of knowledge.
It really is.
Businesses are trapped inside the bottle of their own expertise, their own industry jargon, their own internal goals. They have spent 5 years developing a software feature, so they just assume it is inherently obvious why that feature is valuable.
They think everyone sees what they see.
Right. They put it on the website using internal jargon, and they expect the customer to be amazed.
But the customer is standing outside the bottle.
Hmm.
They can't read the label. They don't know the jargon. They don't care about the 5 years of development, and they don't see the value.
Because the value is trapped in the blind quadrant.
Yes. The entire goal of the uncovery process is to force the business executives to step completely outside the bottle, look at their own digital architecture with fresh eyes, and build pathways that translate their internal knowledge into the customer's language.
And the text gives us a masterclass in how to do this by introducing the concept of persona building, specifically through the story of a hypothetical customer named David C.
Ah, David C.
This is where persuasion architecture gets incredibly granular. Let's dive deep into David, because his journey proves basically everything we've talked about so far.
Okay, let's paint the picture. David C. is a methodical buyer. He is looking for a diamond engagement ring.
High-stakes purchase.
Very. Now, from the business's perspective, inside the bottle, their goal is simple. Sell a diamond, maximize the margin. But what is David's goal? If you just look at his digital footprints, his intellectual goal seems to be researching the 4 C's: cut, clarity, color, and carat weight.
He wants data.
Right. He's downloading charts. He's comparing pricing grids. He wants to feel like a wise, responsible investor who is getting a good deal.
So a lazy jeweler will look at that behavior and say, great, David wants data. We will build a website that is essentially just a massive Excel spreadsheet of diamond specifications.
And they stay entirely in the intellectual perspective.
Which we know is a mistake.
They will lose the sale. Because while David's methodical brain is creating data, his true underlying emotional goal, the actual reason he is spending 2 months' salary, is that he is terrified. And he desperately wants the woman he loves to say yes.
Oh, wow.
He wants to see the look of awe on her face when he opens the box.
This duality is profound. The The buying process is never purely logical. How many jewelry websites fail completely because they only sell the features?
Most of them.
They list the carbon density of the rock, but they completely ignore David's desperate emotional need for reassurance.
Exactly. Persuasion architecture dictates that you must design a digital environment that satisfies David's methodical need for data so he can justify the purchase intellectually, while constantly reinforcing his emotional need to feel confident that this ring is the ultimate symbol of his love.
And you have to design that environment knowing that David is not going to walk through your website in a straight line, right?
That's the hardest part.
The text makes a critical distinction between linear scenarios and non-linear scenarios. In a physical environment, like a grocery store, the architecture is linear.
Right. They control your path.
The store managers put the milk in the very back left corner. They do this intentionally so that you are physically forced to walk past the bookies, the chips, the end cap displays just to get your milk.
You can't avoid it.
But online, the customer has the power to teleport.
Teleporting, exactly.
Yeah.
You cannot force an online customer down a digital aisle.
They go wherever they want.
David might land on your homepage, immediately click on your return policy to ease his anxiety, then jump to a specific diamond setting, then bounce over to your About Us page to see if you're a reputable dealer, and then finally land on the shopping cart.
Completely random.
Therefore, persuasion architecture means building an environment where every potential path, no matter how chaotic or nonlinear, provides continuous value and orientation.
The authors talk about tracking the driving point to the conversion point. What does that mean for catching a teleporting customer like David?
It means you have to identify the key value waypoints of your narrative. If David needs to understand your conflict-free sourcing, your lifetime warranty, and your custom engraving options to feel secure enough to buy, you cannot just put those on page 4 of a linear checkout process.
Because he might not go to page 4.
He might teleport straight to the product page. Every single page on your site must be capable of acting as a landing page. Every page must orient the user, provide a piece of the persuasive gestalt, and subtly guide them toward your ultimate goal.
This is why having that unified perspective, that deep empathy for the rule of one, is so incredibly vital. If David teleports from a highly emotional homepage to a completely cold, jargon-filled FAQ section, the architecture cracks.
The building feels unstable.
Exactly.
The architecture must hold firm no matter which door the customer walks through.
So bringing all these massive sweeping concepts together, we started with the chaos of the dot-com crash, where trillions of dollars were lost because people forgot about the human being on the other side of the screen.
A very expensive lesson.
Indeed. We looked at the internet as a premature baby, requiring the incubator of fundamental persuasion to survive. We examined the hostage negotiation of the basic exchange, where the business's timeline constantly clashes with the buyer's timeline.
We learned from John Steinbeck that every word must be written to one single reader to build intimacy.
We mapped out Joseph Sugarman's 9-step emotional flow. We discovered through the Stanford Pointer Project that we have to design for anxious scouters who only read once they feel safe.
And finally, we look through the Johari window to build a persuasion architecture that catches teleporting customers like David C. and guides them to exactly what they need.
When you synthesize all of that, the overarching soul of this entire body of work is really just a reminder of our humanity. The technology, the servers, the code, the screens is merely a medium.
It's just plumbing.
Exactly. The internet didn't replace human nature. It amplified our desperate need for clarity, for safety, and for empathy. Whether you were writing a single sentence focusing on the what's in it for me, or building a complex, nonlinear website for a multinational corporation, the most successful digital spaces in the world share one common trait.
They completely surrender to the customer's buying process.
Yes, they stop trying to force a sale and they start facilitating the buy.
And that is a lesson that echoes so far beyond web design or digital marketing.
Definitely.
These tools, understanding emotional versus intellectual perspectives, realizing when you are stubbornly speaking from inside your own bottle, recognizing that the person across from you has a completely different timeline and set of anxieties.
These are life skills.
They are applicable every single day of your life. You can use this when you are drafting a difficult email to a colleague, when you are building your resume to land a new job, or even when you are just trying to convince your partner where you should go for dinner tonight.
Because at its core, it is all persuasion. And true persuasion doesn't come from aggressive tactics or flashy technology. It requires a deep, empathetic understanding of the architecture of the human mind on the other side of the screen, or, the other side of the table.
Could not have said it better myself.
Which leaves us with this final challenge for you, the listener, as you navigate your own digital and physical worlds this week. Think about the last major thing you tried to convince someone to do, a product you tried to sell, an idea you pitched, or a favor you asked. Were you talking from inside the bottle, using language only you understood? And more importantly, were you forcing them through your own rigid, self-serving timeline? Or did you take the time to design an architecture where they could discover the value for themselves?
What if the thousands of words you've painstakingly written for your website, the exact words you agonized over for weeks?
Right, tweaking every single adjective and comma.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What if all of that is actively distracting your visitors from buying?
It's the ultimate betrayal, really. You pour your heart into drafting what you think is this masterpiece of corporate communication.
Yeah, and then you realize you've accidentally built a massive text-heavy wall right between your customer and the checkout button.
You see it everywhere. It's almost like a default state for businesses today.
It really is. People treat their websites like a museum for their company history, or like a static brochure they might hand out at a trade show back in 1998.
Completely, fundamentally misunderstanding the medium they're actually working in.
Right. So today, we are taking an exclusive look at pages 13 through 29 of the groundbreaking guide, Persuasive Online Copywriting by Bryan Eisenberg, Jeffrey Eisenberg, and Lisa T. Davis.
Specifically, we're diving deep into Chapter 2 today. And honestly, if there's a foundational text for understanding why your website isn't converting, this section is it.
Yeah, for anyone interested in business, e-commerce, or just entrepreneurship in general, understanding these specific pages is the ultimate shortcut.
It's the shortcut to turning casual browsers into confident buyers. Absolutely.
The mission of our deep dive today is to, deconstruct how to align your words with the buyer's actual psychological process. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's start with the biggest conceptual hurdle most people face, which the authors introduce right away. It's a total paradigm shift.
Oh, for sure.
They argue that web copy isn't journalism, it isn't literature, and it definitely isn't entertainment.
So what is it then?
Web copy is the online equivalent of a conventional flesh and blood salesperson.
Okay, I have to stop you right there because I think a lot of people naturally recoil at that idea.
Oh, they definitely do. The word salesperson has a lot of baggage.
Yeah. Right, because when I think of a website, I think of it as a resource. It's like a digital filing cabinet where a customer can go to learn about a product on their own terms.
Yeah, that's the common perception.
So if you tell me my website is a salesperson, my immediate reaction is that you want me to make my site pushy or aggressive or, littered with flashing buy now banners.
And that is exactly the instinct that leads to the digital filing cabinet approach, which, by the way, is where conversion rates go to die.
Wait, really? The filing cabinet is bad?
Oh, terrible. Because we have a fundamental misconception of what a salesperson actually is. We picture the stereotype, the loud, fast-talking caricature trying to push something on you that you don't even want.
Like a bad used car salesman from a movie?
Exactly. But think about the best retail experience you've ever had. If you walk into a high-end specialty store looking for, say, a very specific type of running shoe because your knees hurt, what does a good salesperson do?
Well, they definitely don't tackle me at the door and scream the specifications of the most expensive shoe in my face.
Right. They greet you. They ask a qualifying question like, what kind of running do you do? Or where does it hurt?
They listen and build rapport.
Exactly. Then they curate the options. They present a solution tailored to your exact problem. They inspire trust by explaining why it works. And yes, they actively ask for the sale.
By offering to bring it to the register for you. So they act as a facilitator, not a dictator.
Right. And your web copy has to do that exact same job. But it has to do it in an environment where the customer can leave at the speed of a mouse click.
That's a ton of pressure for a web page.
It is. The authors stress that this active, sales-driven mindset is necessary because reading on a computer screen is physically and psychologically completely different from reading a book or a magazine.
How so? I mean, words are words, aren't they? Whether they're printed on paper or glowing on a screen, the brain processes the language the same way, doesn't it?
The language processing might be similar, sure, but the psychological state of the user is entirely different. Consider the posture.
The posture, like how they're sitting.
Yeah. When you read a novel, you lean back. You might curl up on a couch. You're relaxed, entering this passive, receptive state.
You're giving the author permission to take you on a journey.
Exactly. You've surrendered your immediate agenda. But when you are on a screen, you are leaning forward.
That's true. I definitely don't curl up with a browser window open to a software pricing page.
No one does. Your hand is literally resting on a device, like a mouse or a trackpad, that's designed for immediate action. You are hunting.
Ah, so you have a specific task in mind or a problem to solve.
Precisely. The lighting of the screen induces a different neurological response. Your posture creates tension, and your intent is entirely transactional. You are in a highly active, impatient state.
That active state must mean that every single word carries a disproportionate amount of weight compared to a printed page, right?
Absolutely.
Because if the user is hunting, they aren't going to tolerate reading some beautiful, sweeping introductory paragraph about my company's founding in 1974.
They won't tolerate it at all. In fact, the text highlights a quote from Ron Mayer of Inner Video that captures the stakes perfectly.
Oh, I remember this part.
Yeah, he points out that simply moving a few sentences around or changing a few specific words can drastically alter what products people actually end up buying.
It's like the digital butterfly effect. But how does that actually play out in real life? Are we saying that swapping the word purchase for get started physically changes consumer behavior?
It absolutely does, because it changes the perceived friction of the transaction. But it's even deeper than just button text. It's really about the flow of information.
Give me an example of that.
Let's say you have a paragraph explaining the technical specs of a product, right? And right below it, a paragraph explaining how those specs save the user 2 hours of work a day.
Okay, specs on top, time savings on bottom.
Right. If you put the technical specs first, the hunting, impatient brain sees a wall of jargon, gets fatigued, and clicks the back button.
But if you flip them,
If you put the time-saving benefit first, the brain gets the dopamine hit of a solved problem. Then it uses the technical specs below to rationally justify the emotional decision to buy.
wow. So if the messaging isn't tightly controlled by someone with a strict sales responsibility, someone who understands that psychology, it is unbelievably easy to accidentally derail the visitor.
Exactly. And the antidote to that derailment is something the authors pull from an unexpected source. They look at the novelist John Steinbeck.
Okay, wait. A minute ago, we established that writing for the web is nothing like writing a novel.
True, we did.
So why on earth are we taking advice from a novelist who wrote sweeping epics about the human condition?
Because Steinbeck understood human connection, which is the absolute prerequisite for any sale. The text quotes Steinbeck saying, "Your audience is one single reader."
Okay, one reader.
He goes on to say, "I have found that sometimes it helps to pick out one person and write to that one."
I see. Because when businesses write copy, they tend to write to a crowd, don't they?
Oh, all the time. They picture thousands of people hitting their homepage, and so their language naturally becomes completely sterile and generalized.
It becomes a broadcast, like, welcome to our synergistic enterprise solutions platform.
Yes. It sounds like an announcement over a loudspeaker in a crowded train station, or a corporate announcement to a stadium full of faceless consumers.
But when you force yourself to write to one specific person, let's say a stressed-out office manager named Sarah, who has 14 tabs open and needs your software to fix a payroll error right this second, your tone inherently shifts.
It has to shift. You stop trying to sound impressive and you start trying to be actually helpful. The tone becomes intimate, conversational, and direct.
That brings us to a huge practical takeaway for anyone listening right now who manages a website or writes copy.
It's a great exercise.
You need to pull up your homepage and read the first 3 paragraphs out loud. Imagine sitting across a coffee table from your ideal customer.
Right. If you said those words out loud to them, would they think you were a helpful, empathetic human being? Or would they think you were a corporate robot reciting a press release? And honestly, most people will find they sound exactly like the robot.
And realizing that is a massive step, isn't it? It completely strips away the ego of copywriting.
It does. Which really brings us to the core mechanism of how we actually connect with that single user once we've adopted this helpful salesperson mindset.
Right. And the book focuses intensely on what they call the relevance mandate.
Relevance. If there is a holy grail of online persuasion, this is it. It is literally the oxygen of the digital sale.
The authors argue that relevance is the single most significant factor in getting a prospect to take action. They make a really critical distinction here, too.
That buying is a process, not an isolated event.
Exactly. Therefore, your selling process, your website's entire architecture and copy must perfectly mirror the customer's internal buying process.
And this isn't just about having the right product either. The relevance has to operate on 2 very distinct levels simultaneously.
Micro and macro, right?
Yes. There is the micro level, which is the experience of the individual web page the user is currently looking at.
And then the macro level.
That's the overall user experience and sequential journey through the entire site, from the first search engine click all the way to the final checkout confirmation.
To really capture what relevance means on an emotional level, I love the analogy the text shares from Roy H. Williams.
Oh, the dog analogy. It's so good.
Yes. He says persuasion is about talking to the dog in the language of the dog, about what is in the heart of the dog.
It's a brilliant way to conceptualize empathy in marketing.
But let me challenge this a bit, because I think it can be confusing. I understand talking to the dog.
Yeah.
That means knowing your target audience.
Right.
But what does it practically mean to speak in the language of the dog versus what is in the heart of the dog? Aren't those basically the same thing?
Not at all. And conflating the two is where so many copywriters fail. The language of the dog refers to the literal vocabulary your customer uses.
Okay, so like industry jargon.
Exactly. If your customer is a mechanic, they use different terminology than a software engineer. If you use hyper-academic language to sell a wrench to a mechanic, you aren't speaking their language.
They will instinctively feel you don't understand their world.
Exactly. Okay, so that's the vocabulary. Then what is the heart of the dog? The heart of the dog is their deepest underlying motivation. It's the why.
So a person doesn't buy a drill bit because they want a drill bit?
No, they buy it because they want a hole in the wall. The heart of the dog is the desire to hang a picture of their family, to make their house feel like a home, to feel competent.
So if you try to talk to the dog in the language of a cat, using corporate jargon about what is in the heart of a bird, maybe the company's internal quarterly profit goals, what happens?
The dog is just going to stare at you in utter confusion and walk away.
You really have to meet the user exactly where they are, using their exact vocabulary, addressing their deepest, most immediate needs.
You do. But doing that consistently across a whole website sounds incredibly complex.
It really does. How do we actually operationalize that?
Well, the text provides a very specific framework for this, borrowing from the offline direct response sales world. It's the AIDAS process, AIDAS.
Yes, the classic formula?
It's been around for over a century in advertising, but the authors brilliantly adapt it for the hyper-accelerated environment of the web. This is the structural engine of conversion.
Now, I have to be a skeptic here for a second.
Go for it.
You're telling me that a framework invented before the internet even existed maps perfectly to a modern e-commerce checkout flow, where people are distracted by 10 other browser tabs, a ringing phone, and a targeted ad on their second monitor.
I am, because while the technology changes, human neurology does not. The way a human brain processes a decision to trust and buy remains exactly the same.
It just happens much faster online.
Exactly. Let's break down the AIDA steps, because this is how you force your copy to be relevant.
Okay, let's start with A.
The first A stands for attention. On the web, you have roughly 8 seconds to grab your visitor's attention.
8 seconds is nothing. That's barely enough time to read a headline and look at a hero image. Why is the window so brutally short?
It comes down to cognitive load and the abundance of choice. When someone lands on your page, their brain is doing a rapid triage.
What are they asking themselves in that moment?
They're asking, am I in the right place? Does this look like it solves my problem? Is this going to be difficult? The brain just wants to conserve energy.
So if your headline is vague, or if it's a clever pun that requires 3 seconds of thought to decipher, that's a problem.
A huge problem. The brain registers that as cognitive friction. The back button is right there, offering an instant escape to a competitor's site that might be easier to understand.
So your headline must immediately and clearly signal relevance.
Right. And if you survive that 8-second test and actually get their attention, you move to I.
Which is interest. But honestly, this seems like it would just blend into attention. How are they really different?
Attention is just stopping them from leaving. Interest is confirming they are in the exact right place. This is where you transition from a bold claim to specific resonance. The copy needs to suggest that your solution is not just an option, but the most relevant and useful option for their specific scenario.
You are detailing the problem they have, proving that you understand the heart of the dog.
Exactly.
I see. So attention is, we fix plumbing. Interest is your basement currently flooding at 2 a.m. on a Sunday?
Yes. You've hooked them, and now you are mirroring their exact crisis. Once you have their interest, you transition to D, which is desire.
Desire. This feels like the pivot. You've talked about the problem. Now you have to engage their imagination regarding the solution.
You have to write in a way that makes them actually feel the value of what you're offering.
But how do you make someone feel value through just text on a screen?
By moving them from logical features to emotional benefits, you paint a picture of the after state.
So you don't just say, our software automates data entry.
Right. Instead, you say, imagine leaving the office at 5:00 p.m. on a Friday because your weekly reports generated themselves.
Oh, that's good. You need them to picture themselves using the product and experiencing the relief or joy it brings.
You are moving them from the analytical left brain to the emotional right brain.
And that emotional peak is where you introduce the second A, which is action. And this honestly seems to be where a shocking number of beautiful websites completely fail.
It's staggering. A company will spend tens of thousands of dollars on design, craft incredible copy that builds immense desire, and then
They put a tiny gray, unreadable link at the bottom of the page that just says submit.
Exactly. Action means making it obvious and easy for your visitors to take the next step. Are you explicitly asking them to take action with a clear command?
And crucially, the text talks about providing reassuring information right at the point of action.
Yes, point of action reassurance. This is so vital. When a user is about to click a buy now or sign up button, their anxiety naturally spikes.
They wonder, am I going to be spammed? Am I locked into a contract? What if I hate it?
It's the digital equivalent of reaching for your wallet in a store. It's a real moment of vulnerability.
Right, so a master copywriter places tiny, highly relevant pieces of copy right next to the button to neutralize that anxiety.
Exactly. A little note under the button that says, no credit card required, or free shipping and easy returns, or we will never share your email.
You anticipate the hesitation and dissolve it before they can even fully process it.
Which leads us to the final step, S for satisfaction.
Now, usually in the old offline ATIS model, satisfaction meant the customer liked the physical product they took home. But how does that apply to a web page?
On the web, satisfaction happens immediately after the click. It's all about fulfilling the promise of the button.
Okay, give me an example of that.
If they clicked a button that said, see pricing options, and they land on a page that forces them to fill out a 10-field lead generation form before seeing a single number.
Oh, I hate that. Their satisfaction drops to 0.
Exactly. The dog feels tricked.
The dog feels tricked, loses trust, and walks away.
The post-click page must deliver exactly what the pre-click page promised instantly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where the micro and macro levels of relevance collide.
Okay, expand on that a bit. How do they collide?
Well, the ATIS framework isn't just for your homepage. It must be applied to the micro experience of every single page on your site.
So a product page has an ATIS flow. A checkout page has an ATIS flow. Even a contact page has one.
Exactly. And when you string all those micro ATIS pages together, they create the macro ATIS journey of the entire website.
So if you drop the ball on the action step of page 3 or the satisfaction step of page 4, the momentum of the entire macro journey is destroyed.
And the sale is lost.
It's a chain, and it's really only as strong as its weakest page. This hyper-focus on moving the customer forward towards a specific action brings us to a really fascinating historical shift.
Oh, you're talking about how people view words on the internet.
Yes, the text tackles what they call the myth of content is king.
This is honestly one of the most destructive myths in the history of web design, and it still haunts e-commerce today.
The case of content versus copy. Let's define the terms first, because traditionally, there's been this strict separation in people's minds, hasn't there?
Yeah, very strict.
Content is usually viewed as the long stuff. The informative articles, the blog posts, the white papers, the detailed company histories. It's meant to educate.
Right. And copy is the short, punchy, persuasive text, like headlines, sales letters, and call to action buttons. It's meant to sell.
It's the separation of the library and the sales floor. But the authors argue that in the realm of a business website, that separation is not just false, it is actively dangerous.
They state a rule very clearly. All content must persuade and all copy must inform.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here. What is wrong with having a purely informative blog post on my e-commerce site?
No.
Like, if I sell gardening tools, why can't I just have a nice, passive 2,000-word article about the history of soil pH levels? Doesn't that build authority?
It might build authority in an academic sense, sure, but what is the actual purpose of your website? Is it an encyclopedia or is it a business?
It's a business.
Right. So if it's a business, then every single page must serve the ultimate goal of conversion. But for a long time, companies didn't understand this.
The text details the history of this content bandwagon, actually.
Yes. Where did this bandwagon start? Why did everyone suddenly become obsessed with churning out encyclopedic content?
Well, in the earlier days of the web, major advisory firms like Forrester Research came out and proclaimed that content was the single biggest driver of traffic to websites.
Right, and at the time, they were looking at early search engine metrics. Search engines loved text.
So what did companies do? They panicked. They thought, if content brings traffic, then more words equal more value.
And they bloated their pages with tons of pointless text.
They prioritized eyeballs over actions.
Exactly. They adopted the media publishing model, where success is measured in page views and time on site, instead of the e-commerce model, where success is measured in sales.
They forgot that searching for information is fundamentally different from going shopping.
When you are shopping, you are in that active forward-leaning state we talked about earlier.
Yes. And if you are in that active state and you encounter a massive wall of passive content that doesn't directly help you make a confident purchasing decision.
It isn't just useless text. It is actively destructive to your conversion rates. It's an obstacle course.
To really illustrate how closely content and copy must intertwine, I want to bring up that brilliant scenario from Nick Usborne and Ann Handley that the authors use.
Oh, the grant application scenario. It's perfect.
Imagine a user is on a prominent charitable foundation's website to apply for a grant. The purpose of this visit is highly active. There's a very specific goal.
Okay, so they're on a mission.
Now, the long-form instructions on the criteria for the grant and how to apply, that's traditional content. The buttons they need to click to actually submit the forms, that's traditional copy.
So what happens if those two things aren't working together?
Well, if the long-form instructions, the content, are incredibly dry, confusing, filled with legal jargon, and entirely passive, the user's going to get bogged down.
The content just drags the reader down. It fails to persuade them that the process is even worth the effort, and they abandon the application entirely.
Exactly. The content failed to act like copy.
Right. But on the flip side, let's say the instructions are wonderfully engaging and clear, but the persuasive copy on the actual buttons is vague.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Maybe the button at the bottom of the long form just says submit instead of submit final grant application now. Or maybe there are 3 different buttons and it's unclear which one is the right one.
The user feels a massive spike of anxiety right at the point of action. They freeze and the whole system fails.
In that case, the copy failed to act like content. It failed to inform.
They really have to work in absolute tandem. The content has to keep the user engaged and moving forward, acting like persuasive copy.
And the copy has to clearly inform the user about exactly what is happening, acting like informative content.
So, relying on the old separation is kind of like walking into a hardware store to buy a hammer. You are ready to buy, but the salesperson stops you in the aisle and forces you to read a 20-page history of metallurgy before you're allowed to walk to the register.
That's hilarious, but it's exactly what happened.
Sure, it's technically information, it's content, but it's completely blocking the sale. I don't care about the Bronze Age, I just want to hang a picture frame.
That analogy perfectly captures the friction of bad web design. The metallurgy history is not relevant to the heart of the dog.
You are forcing the dog to care about your vast knowledge instead of handing the dog the bone it's asking for.
So the practical takeaway for anyone auditing their site is to put your website's content on a strict, ruthless diet. Every single paragraph, every sentence needs to justify its existence.
You have to ask yourself, does this sentence actively support the prospect's momentum toward the checkout page or the contact form?
Does it answer a specific objection they might have right now? If it just exists to show off how smart your company is, or because some marketing guru said you needed 1,500 words for SEO.
Get rid of it.
Get rid of it! You have to kill your darlings.
And the reason this ruthlessness is so vital online, much more so than in traditional offline marketing, has to do with the fundamental nature of the internet audience itself.
Which brings us to the final major concept from these pages, the networked audience and customer-centric copy.
This is where the authors draw a stark, undeniable line between the offline world of advertising and the online world of conversion.
It's a completely different landscape.
Yep.
When we think of offline copywriting, the classic Madison Avenue ad agencies, the glossy magazine spreads, the Super Bowl TV commercials,
that entire industry operates in a closed loop.
It's a broadcast model. The corporation has the money, they dictate the exact message they want to send, they buy the media space, and they broadcast it outward to a completely passive audience.
The audience basically just sits on their couch, receives the message, and that's the end of the immediate interaction. The power dynamic is entirely top-down.
But online copywriting destroys that power dynamic because the online audience is not silent. They are vocal, they are active, and most importantly, they are networked.
This is the crucial difference. The authors mention early internet platforms like Opinions and Planet Feedback.
Right, which were some of the first sites where consumers could publicly review products and complain about companies.
And today, we can map that directly to an ecosystem that is infinitely more powerful. We're talking about Reddit, Twitter, TikTok, specialized Discord servers, Trustpilot.
Exactly. The underlying behavior hasn't changed, it's just scaled massively. Today, a consumer can take your multi-million-dollar marketing message and just tear it apart for being disingenuous.
They can film a 2-minute video about how your product failed them and share that experience with 3 million people instantly.
The audience talks back, and they talk to each other.
Which means the old brochureware approach to websites completely fails. You can't just upload a glossy, self-congratulatory corporate brochure and expect people to be wowed into submission.
Your copy has to be relentlessly, almost obsessively customer-focused. Because if it's not, the networked audience will see right through the corporate veil.
And they won't just ignore you. They will actively organize against you.
They will call you out. To show what this looks like in practice, the text provides a fantastic before and after case study of a service called NewsBios.
Let's walk through this case study in detail because it is incredibly revealing for anyone trying to figure out why their own copy isn't working.
The before version of the NewsBios copy was a classic textbook example of corporate brochureware.
It was long, it was dense, but most importantly, it was entirely focused on the company's own goals and its own features. It was just a monologue of self-importance.
It used a ton of we and our language. It said things like, we provide a comprehensive database, or our system allows for deep profiling of journalists.
It was totally self-serving. Going back to our earlier analogy, it was talking to the dog about what was in the heart of the corporation.
And the corporation cared about how big its database was. The user did not.
But then, a professional copywriter named Lori got her hands on the site. And in the after version, Lori didn't just tweak the grammar.
She performed a complete psychological flip on the perspective. She ditched all the self-serving, ego-driven text.
As the text says, she started treating the reader as a sentient being. Think about how powerful that phrasing is.
She recognized there was a stressed-out human on the other end of the screen. The new copy immediately acknowledged the daily frustrations the reader was facing in their job as a PR professional trying to pitch stories.
She didn't just list features like a robot. She offered the product as a tool to educate the reader, to make their life easier, to make them look good to their boss, and ultimately to get them more publicity.
It was shorter, it was entirely benefit-driven, and it aimed straight at the heart of the dog.
Instead of the before version saying something like, our database contains thousands of media contacts, the after version essentially said, imagine finding the perfect journalist who is practically begging for your exact story in seconds.
So much more compelling. So what does this all mean? How do we take the lesson of NewsBios and apply it immediately?
It means you have to perform a brutal, ego-less evaluation of your own copy. You need to do a we-you ratio check.
I love that. Literally count the pronouns.
Exactly. Print out your homepage. Take a red pen and circle every time you say I, we, our, or your company name.
And then take a green pen and circle every time you say you or your.
If your page looks like a sea of red ink, if you're on constantly saying, we pride ourselves on our customer service, or our proprietary technology is industry leading, you sound like the self-centered guest at a dinner party who only talks about themselves.
And nobody wants to be cornered by that guy at a party. You just politely nod while looking for the nearest exit.
But on the internet, because your visitors are a networked audience, they won't even politely nod.
No, they will immediately leave the party, go to another party hosted by your competitor, tell all their friends you are incredibly boring and self-absorbed, and tell them to avoid your website entirely.
The internet has handed the consumer a massive megaphone. Your copy has to respect that dynamic by being entirely unselfishly focused on them.
Okay, we've dissected a lot of intense psychological concepts here. Let's pull the camera back and synthesize all these key ideas from Chapter 2.
We started by shattering the illusion of the digital filing cabinet, establishing that your website must act as an active, empathetic, digital salesperson writing to a single specific reader.
Then we explore the absolute non-negotiable mandate of relevance, both micro and macro, using the psychological steps of the ATIS framework.
We then dismantled the dangerous myth that passive content is king, proving that in e-commerce, all copy must inform, and all content must persuade without causing friction.
And finally, we looked at the active, networked nature of the online audience and why the old self-centered brochureware approach will get you immediately rejected by consumers who demand you-focused language.
When you weave all of these threads together, a very clear, singular philosophy emerges. The soul of this chapter is that persuasive online copywriting is fundamentally an act of profound empathy.
It's the conscious, deliberate shift from a broadcast mindset where you are just standing on a mountain, yelling your features into the void, to a conversational mindset.
It's about doing the hard work of understanding your customer's vocabulary and their deepest desires, and then building a streamlined, frictionless digital journey.
A journey that deeply respects the fact that there is an active, impatient, connected human being on the other side of the screen.
It's giving them exactly the relevant words they need at exactly the right emotional moment so they can feel confident in their choices. It's not about tricking them into clicking. It's about confidently guiding them toward a solution they actually want.
And frankly, that requires a level of discipline, humility, and psychological understanding of your customer that most companies simply never bother to develop.
They take the lazy route of talking about themselves. But if you do the work to build that empathy, your words literally transcend text. They become a mechanical engine for conversion.
We've dismantled the myths of online writing today and built a rock-solid foundation of relevance. We know how to speak to the dog.
But here is the next hurdle. How do you actually find the distinct, nuanced voice that will make your brand unforgettable to different specific types of buyers?
Because not every customer is the same.
Exactly. That's what we'll uncover in our next chapter as we explore the fascinating concept of applying Emily and the art of writing for highly specific buyer personalities.
This raises an important question for you to consider as you log off and audit your own site today. What if the most profitable, important piece of copywriting on your entire website isn't your clever, expensive homepage headline?
Right? What if it isn't your beautifully crafted 500-word mission statement?
What if the most valuable real estate on your site is the tiny single sentence of reassurance placed directly underneath your submit payment button? If every single click on the internet is a psychological decision fraught with anxiety, where exactly are your words working the hardest?
On the internet, you don't actually exist.
Right.
I mean, your physical self, your real-world quirks, your posture, even the way you clear your throat before you speak. None of it matters.
Yeah, it's all invisible.
Exactly. Behind the screen, you are basically a phantom. You're constructed entirely out of the words you choose to write. And if your words are boring, well, you are boring. But if your words are magnetic, you become unforgettable.
And you know, what's fascinating here is that this digital wall, it isn't a limitation. It's actually the ultimate blank canvas for persuasion.
Okay, yes.
It forces this complete distillation of human identity into pure text. And the wild thing about that constraint is it gives you way more control over how you're perceived.
Right, because you curate it.
Exactly. You can connect with another human being more deeply than you ever could in the sort of, chaotic, unpredictable physical world.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are unpacking Chapter 3 of Persuasive Online Copywriting, specifically pages 30 to 34, to really master the art of finding your voice online.
It's a great section.
It really is. You're about to learn how a reclusive 19th century poet holds the absolute secret to digital branding, why your product's most impressive features are secretly killing your sales, and how to trigger the raw emotional imagery that actually drives human decisions.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that is absolutely vital for anyone looking to survive and thrive in business or entrepreneurship today.
It's totally vital. We're taking concepts that usually live in this abstract literature space or maybe high-level psychology, and we're tying them directly to the bottom line of human behavior and business strategy.
Right.
It's all about bridging that gap between who you are, what you're offering, and how the person on the other side of the screen actually processes that information.
So I want to dive straight into the historical anchor for this whole concept. Yeah. Because when I was looking through our source material for today, I definitely did not expect to run into a history lesson on American poetry.
Yeah, it's a bit of a curveball.
It really is.
Yeah.
But the core metaphor for modern digital communication here centers entirely on Emily Dickinson.
She really is the ultimate archetypal metaphor for the modern digital communicator.
Which sounds crazy at first.
It does, but it's not just a historical curiosity. It's a masterclass in how to project presence when you are physically absent.
So let's set the stage for this because the contrast is just incredible. Think about this. It's the 19th century. Emily Dickinson is born into a pretty wealthy family in 1830.
Right?
And when she's 18 years old, she has her photograph taken. It's a static daguerreotype, one of those early silvered copper plate photos where you had to sit perfectly still for a long time.
Yeah, very rigid.
Right. And here is the wild part. That is the only photograph that will ever be made of her.
Wow.
Yeah. For the rest of her life, she lives this remarkably uneventful existence until she quietly passes away at age 55.
And it's exactly the gap between that single photograph at 18 and her death at 55 that holds the secret to everything we're talking about today.
Because her physical reality was just incredibly restricted. I mean, she was famously shy. She wouldn't even sit in the parlor with guests over tea.
Right. She'd hide away.
Yeah. Instead, she would ask her friends to speak to her through an open door from an adjoining room. So she's literally standing behind a wall while having a conversation.
Which is such a striking image.
It is. Her entire physical life was basically just tending her garden, baking bread, and writing. She didn't travel. She never married. She barely even left her property. She lived entirely in this world of imagination.
Yet, and this is the key, despite that extreme physical isolation, she built profound, deeply emotional relationships.
Right.
And how did she do it? Through words. Words were literally the only tool she had to generate a rich, vivid series of associations for those people sitting on the other side of the wall.
Right, because she couldn't smile at them.
Exactly. She couldn't rely on a warm smile or, a comforting touch on the arm or making eye contact. Her vocabulary, her pacing, her tone, that was her entire existence to the outside world.
Okay, I get the historical intrigue, and it's a great story. But I want to push back a little and challenge how this actually applies to us today.
Sure. Yeah.
Because it feels like a massive leap, right? Going from a reclusive baker in the 1800s to someone trying to, sell B2B software or launch a consulting business or build a personal brand in the 21st century.
Well, the medium has definitely changed, but the barrier is identical.
Identical.
Yeah. That physical wall Emily stood behind is the exact same thing as the computer screen or the smartphone you're holding right now.
Oh, I see.
It is a barrier, yes. But more importantly, it's a filter. Think about the people on the other side of Emily's wall. Their entire understanding of who she was, their whole relationship with her, was formed by just two things.
The picture and the voice.
Exactly. A single static image of her at 18 and the stream of words she spoke through the door.
A static image and a stream of words. I mean, that is literally just a social media profile. That's a Twitter account.
It is exactly a digital profile. It's a LinkedIn page. It's a corporate About Us section or a daily email newsletter. The physical dimensions of her actual personality at age 40 or 50 were completely hidden.
Right.
The outside world didn't see if she was slouching. They didn't know if she looked exhausted or if she was covered in flour from baking bread.
Yeah.
They only experienced the mind and the voice that she actively chose to project through that door.
Okay, let's unpack this curation idea, though.
Sure.
Because isn't curating reality just PR spin for lying by omission?
How do you mean?
Well, if I'm a boring accountant in real life, let's say my idea of a wild Friday night is organizing my Excel macros and going to bed at 8 p.m.
Sounds relaxing.
Right. But should I be pretending to be some kind of extreme sports thrill seeker online just to get attention? If I'm hiding my boring traits, aren't I basically tricking the customer? I really struggle with the line between curation and deception here.
And that is a fundamental fear for a lot of people when they hear the phrase building a persona. But we really have to separate fraud from deliberate communication. Curation is not deception. Deception would be the accountant claiming they have a degree they don't have or, lying about their financial returns.
Right. Actual fraud.
Exactly. Curation is simply recognizing that the customer doesn't need to see you organizing your macros at 8 p.m., unless, of course, you can make that compelling. Who you actually are out there in cyberspace matters far less than who your customers imagine you to be based on the signals you send.
So it's more about controlling the signals rather than inventing a fake history.
Precisely. Let's stick with your accountant example. In reality, you might be a dreadful bore at a cocktail party. You might stutter, avoid eye contact, maybe you trail off in the middle of your sentences because you're nervous.
Yeah, very relatable for a lot of people.
But online, Online, you have the backspace key. You have the time to craft a narrative. You can take your genuine, authentic love for financial order and write about it with passion and precision and wit.
They're still you.
Yes, you are still the accountant, but you are delivering the absolute best, most articulate version of your expertise.
I see the distinction now. So Emily Dickinson wasn't lying to her friends through the door. She wasn't like pretending to be a sea captain or something.
Right, no.
She was still Emily. But because they couldn't see her, she had to rely entirely on her words to ignite their imaginations.
And this is the crucial mechanism of digital persuasion. Your words are the literal building blocks the customer uses to construct a mental avatar of you.
Because they have nothing else.
Exactly. They don't have your body language to read. They can't subconsciously evaluate your posture. In text, they only have your word choices, your sentence structure, your punctuation.
Right.
So if you use stiff, corporate, jargon-filled language, the customer's brain automatically constructs an avatar of a stiff, corporate, faceless entity.
And nobody wants to do business with a stiff, faceless entity. I mean, we are biologically wired to do business with people we like and trust.
Exactly. The human brain is desperately searching for another human on the other side of the screen. If you just give them corporate speak, you are starving them of that connection.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You must take active control over the character of the personality you create through your words. You can't treat your online copy as some minor administrative task. It's the entire architectural blueprint for your digital self.
Which is incredibly empowering, but honestly also terrifying when you really internalize it. Like, think about your own website right now. If your website copy is boring, it's not just a reflection of a bad marketing day. To the customer, you are boring.
Yes.
The product is boring. The entire ecosystem of your business is boring.
It is an absolute judgment. I mean, in the physical world, if you fumble a sales pitch in a boardroom, you have safety nets, right?
Yeah, you can recover.
Right. You can save the interaction with a warm smile, a firm handshake, maybe taking the client out for a great lunch and building rapport.
Sure.
On the web. If your copy is bad, they just click the back button. The relationship is instantly terminated. You don't get to buy them a coffee. The words were the entire interaction.
So, assuming we take the time to craft this magnetic, engaging voice, we've used our backspace key, we're presenting our best professional self.
Right.
What happens next? Because maintaining that voice seems to be where the real challenge lies.
Oh, absolutely. That brings us to the fragility of trust. Once you've established a voice through that digital wall, consistency becomes our most valuable asset. And this is where a staggering number of businesses completely self-destruct.
Let's go back to Emily's door for a second to illustrate this. So imagine you are standing in the hallway, exchanging confidences with Emily. Her voice is understanding, compassionate, sharp. You feel safe. You feel a real connection.
Yeah.
But then you come back the next day, stand by the door, and suddenly she sounds like a completely different person. The source material uses a very specific, evocative phrase for this. It says she sounds like a gutter snipe.
A gutter snipe, a coarse, jarring, complete 180-degree turn in personality and tone.
To put this in a modern context, it's like going on a fantastic first date. The person across the table is warm, funny, they're asking great questions, they're wonderfully self-deprecating. You think, wow, I really connect with this person.
You're invested.
Right. So you agree to a second date, and on the second date, they sit down, look you dead in the eye, and start talking to you like a cold, robotic DMV employee. Please, state your query. The processing time for this conversation will be 5 to 7 minutes.
You would experience massive cognitive dissonance.
I would get emotional whiplash.
Mhm.
I think I was sitting with an alien in a human suit.
Yeah.
I'd literally be looking for the nearest exit. All that trust built on the first date would just evaporate instantly.
And we really need to unpack why that trust evaporates so instantly, because it comes down to evolutionary biology.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the human brain hates inconsistency.
Oh.
In our evolutionary past, inconsistency was a reliable indicator of danger.
Like a rustle in the bushes.
Exactly. If a pattern broke in your environment, it meant something was wrong. So, when a visitor comes to your website, they are subconsciously looking for a stable pattern. They want to know they're interacting with the same reassuring entity every time they click a link.
So when you change personalities midstream, you are literally triggering an alarm bell in their brain.
Precisely.
Hmm.
Let's look at how this happens in modern marketing, particularly in what we call the middle of the funnel.
Okay, the customer journey.
Right, from first hearing about you to considering your product to actually buying it. So a company might run a brilliant, funny, highly engaging ad on social media. The ad has an expressive personality. It uses humor, bold claims, maybe even a little slang. It feels very human.
Let's define an expressive personality really quickly, just so everyone has a clear picture. We're talking about copy that is enthusiastic, colorful, maybe relies on exclamation points and storytelling, right?
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
the extrovert of the copywriting world. It's designed to grab attention and build immediate emotional rapport. So the customer clicks the ad because they like that expressive persona. They land on the homepage and the tone holds up. They trust you. But then they decide to buy.
And this is where it breaks.
Right. They click add to cart or they go to the customer service page and suddenly the tone shifts dramatically.
Yeah.
The checkout page reads like a Victorian legal contract. The welcome email sounds like an automated tax receipt. Your transaction has been processed. Synergistic enterprise solutions have been deployed.
It's the corporate gutter snipe. They've broken character.
They've completely broken character, and when the character breaks, the magic spell of persuasion is broken too. The brain says, wait a minute. The funny, empathetic person I liked isn't real. I've been lured in by a corporate machine.
It feels like a trap.
Yeah, they feel subject to a bait and switch. Without a coherent, stable image from the first click to the final receipt, deep trust is biologically impossible.
This really highlights the sheer mechanical difficulty of writing at scale. Because, Emily Dickinson was actually talking to one person in the hallway. But when you are writing an email newsletter or a sales page, you're talking to 10,000 people at once.
Right.
How do you maintain that intimate consistency when the medium itself is mass communication?
Well, you have to master the illusion of the one-to-one relationship. Let's go behind Emily's wall again for a minute.
Okay.
When she is talking to you through the door, you feel like you have her complete, undivided attention. Her words make you feel seen. But the reality, behind that wall, Emily might literally be making notations in her gardening diary or deciding which sauce to whip up for the roast beef that night.
She might be intensely multitasking.
Exactly. But the person in the hallway doesn't know that. And frankly, they don't care as long as the words feel directed at them.
Right. It's the perception that matters.
Yeah. This is the crux of digital relationship building. When you are writing an email to a list of 10,000 subscribers, you are obviously writing one message to a massive crowd. You might be watching Netflix while your automation software hits send.
Yeah.
But the person receiving it, they are sitting alone. They're looking at their phone on the train or staring at their laptop in a quiet kitchen. They are isolated. Your copy must bridge that gap and meet them in their isolation.
Which means writing to the crowd is a fatal error. If I start my email with, hey, everyone, or to all our valued customers out there, I am immediately shattering the illusion. I'm basically reminding them that they are just one data point in a database of thousands.
Yes, you rebuild the wall instead of speaking through the door. You sound like a broadcaster holding a megaphone in a stadium rather than a friend sitting across the table.
That's a great way to put it.
The practical application here is absolute. Write every single piece of copy as if you are speaking to one person and one person only. Use the word you. Address their specific individual pain points.
Yeah, I've seen that work so well.
The most successful creators and brands in the world are the ones where you read their newsletter and think, I know logically this went to 1 million people, but it feels like they wrote this just for me.
I have absolutely experienced that. I'm on newsletters where I will literally reply to the email because the tone is so perfectly dialed into a one-to-one frequency that my brain just forgets it's an automated broadcast.
Because they have curated their persona, they've kept it rigorously consistent across every touch point, and they've directed it singularly at you. That is the architecture of a powerful digital voice.
Okay, so that sets our foundation. We understand how to project our identity and how to maintain the relationship. But here is where we hit the real friction point.
Where is that?
Well, we know who we are, and we know we're speaking to one person. But what do we actually say through that wall to get them to take action? How do we persuade them to pull out their credit card or sign up for the consultation?
Ah, yes. This brings us to a concept that is often called Sales 101, but it is perhaps the most misunderstood and poorly executed rule in all of business communication.
The eternal battle.
Right, the eternal battle between selling benefits versus selling features.
Sell benefits, not features.
Yeah.
Anyone who has spent 5 minutes studying marketing has heard this mantra, but the way our source material breaks down the underlying psychology of this is so visceral. I really want us to spend serious time tearing it apart.
It's crucial.
Because knowing the rule conceptually and actually executing it when you sit down to write are two completely different realities.
It is the most common trap for entrepreneurs, engineers, and creators. When you pour your blood, sweat, and tears into creating a product, you become deeply obsessed with what it is.
Right, you're proud of it.
Exactly. You understand the mechanics and materials, the back-end code. You're proud of those things. So naturally, you want to tell the world about them. But the hard truth is, the customer doesn't care about what it is. They only care about what it does for them.
Let's use the classic quintessential example to ground this, the electric drill.
Perfect example.
The fundamental truth of hardware marketing is that nobody is going to buy an electric drill just so they can proudly own an electric drill. I mean, unless they are a highly specific antique tool collector, they don't want a drill.
They want holes.
Exactly. But it goes even deeper than just holes.
Mm-hmm.
The copy needs to speak to the specific felt needs surrounding those holes.
Right.
When someone's walking down the aisle at a hardware store, they're stressed about a project. They need clean holes so they don't splinter their expensive wood. They need deep holes, accurate holes. They want holes in a hurry so they can finish the job and watch the football game. They need to drill through different materials without breaking a bit.
Yeah, there's a whole narrative there.
That complex web of desires is what they're actually shopping for.
And this perfectly defines the line between a feature and a benefit. A feature is a dry, factual statement about the product itself.
Like what?
Like, the drill has a 20-volt lithium-ion battery. It has a brushless motor. Or, as our source material hilariously points out, it has a space-age aluminum alloy casing.
Okay, stop right there. I have to confess something, and I'm going to push back on this rule for a second.
Go for it.
As a massive tech nerd, when I am shopping for a new laptop or a new gadget, I want the spec sheet. I want to talk about the space-age aluminum alloy casing.
You like the details.
I love knowing the exact megahertz of the processor, the exact type of metal used, the thermal dynamics of the cooling system. If a company doesn't give me the features, I feel like they are hiding something. So isn't it a mistake to completely ignore features?
It's a great pushback, but we have to look at the neurology of why you care about the specs. It's not that you're wrong to care about the aluminum alloy casing. It's that you are doing subconscious translation work that most people's brains just refuse to do.
What do you mean by translation work?
Let's interrogate your love for the aluminum alloy casing. Do you just have a deep, passionate affection for the molecular structure of aluminum? Do you sit around admiring the periodic table?
Well, no. I like the aluminum alloy casing because I know it means the drill won't shatter into pieces if I accidentally knock it off my workbench onto the concrete floor of my garage.
Right.
And it's probably significantly lighter than steel, so my arm won't feel like it's falling off if I'm drilling overhead into the ceiling for an hour.
Look at what you just did. You took a feature aluminum alloy and your brain instantly translated it into two distinct benefits: extreme durability and physical comfort.
Oh, I see.
You did the heavy lifting. The problem is, most customers will not burn the cognitive calories required to do that translation. They read aluminum alloy and their eyes glaze over because it is abstract data.
They don't have the context to translate the data into an emotional reality.
Exactly. The human brain is incredibly stingy with its energy. Processing abstract data like brushless motor or aluminum alloy takes cognitive effort. The brain will only expend that effort if it immediately sees a connection to survival, status, convenience, or safety. A feature only matters if it translates directly to a felt need.
Performance, convenience, safety. Those are the translation keys.
Yes. The catastrophic mistake businesses make is that they list the feature, "Behold our space-age aluminum alloy casing," and they stop typing.
Right. They assume the work is done.
Or assume the customer will do the mental gymnastics to figure out why they should care. But if you don't explicitly connect the dots to their emotional reality, they just click away.
So if I'm writing the copy for this drill, I shouldn't just paste the spec sheet. I need to weave the feature into a narrative of the benefit.
Exactly.
I need to write something like, drop it off a 10-foot ladder, no problem. Our space-age aluminum alloy casing means this drill survives the absolute toughest job sites. While being so incredibly light, your arm won't ache after a full day of overhead work.
Now you aren't just selling a chunk of metal, you're selling a guarantee of safety and relief from physical pain. You are saving the customer from the frustration of a broken tool and the agony of a tired shoulder. Those are emotional anchors.
It's a massive shift in perspective because it forces you to completely strip away your own ego. You have to stop bragging about how brilliantly you engineered the product and force yourself into the shoes of the exhausted person trying to use it on a Sunday afternoon.
It requires deep empathy, and this applies to every industry, not just hardware. Think about cosmetics. Our source material provides a brilliant, vivid example regarding lipstick.
Oh, this one is fantastic. The example points out that a woman shopping for lipstick does not care that a tube contains a chemical called, let me get this right, tetroboxamanganate hypoperoxidase.
Good luck pronouncing that on a billboard.
Right. Now, the authors admit they completely made that chemical name up, but the underlying point is devastatingly true. Nobody is walking into a cosmetic store, marching up to the counter and asking, "Excuse me, where is your hypoperoxidase section?"
Unless a chemical ingredient has been massively branded to the point where the ingredient becomes the benefit like Lycra in clothing, or maybe retinol in skincare, a chemical formula is the ultimate dry, dead feature. It is pure data.
So what is the actual benefit of the lipstick? If they aren't buying the chemical compound, what are they handing their credit card over for?
They are buying confidence, they're buying allure, they're buying the feeling of walking into a room and being noticed.
Right.
Or on a more practical level, they are buying the physical comfort of a moisturizing formula that guarantees they won't have cracked, painful lips in the winter. The chemical name is the literal substance in the tube, but the customer is buying the style and the emotional outcome.
It perfectly echoes that famous old quote from Charles Revson, the founder of Revlon Cosmetics. He said, "In the factory we make cosmetics, in the drugstore we sell hope."
It's one of the greatest summaries of marketing ever spoken. If your website is essentially a virtual factory tour detailing the machinery, the algorithms, the chemical compounds, the raw features, you are going to bore your visitors into a coma.
Yeah, no one wants the factory tour.
You have to translate everything into the drugstore experience. You have to sell the hope, the outcome, the transformed version of the customer.
This requires a ruthless, almost painful audit of our own communication. I'm thinking about my own writing habits right now and how incredibly easy it is to fall back into talking about the how instead of the why, especially in the tech and software space.
It's so common.
I'll catch myself writing things like, "Our software uses a proprietary machine learning algorithm with a 12-point heuristic analysis."
Which is just the B2B software equivalent of tetroboxamanganate hypoperoxidase.
It completely is. It's pure ego. I want them to know how smart my code is. But if I apply the translation key, it needs to be. Our software automatically spots hidden errors in your accounting before they happen, saving you hours of frantic, sweaty panic during tax season.
See, you've moved from the engine room into the driver's seat. You are talking about the thrill of the destination, not the spark plugs. And this brings us to the profound psychological and biological truth that underlies this entire concept.
Okay, let's get into that.
Why do benefits work so much better than features? Why are human beings wired this way?
We really have to unpack the neurology of emotion here. Because as we've established, logic and data just bounce off the human brain unless they are attached to a feeling.
When human beings make personal decisions, whether it's deciding to buy a car, subscribe to a newsletter, even just click a link, we run a highly complex subconscious simulation in our mind.
A simulation.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
project ourselves into the future. We evaluate the emotional risks and the emotional benefits of making that decision.
We put ourselves in the picture. I love that framework. It's such a cinematic way to think about human psychology.
It is the absolute core driver of human action. If a customer cannot grab onto an emotional image, if they cannot visualize themselves experiencing the benefit, they literally cannot make the decision to buy.
Wow.
It's not that they stubbornly refuse to buy, it is a cognitive block.
It is a very heavy distinction. Logic makes us think, but emotion is the biological catalyst that makes us act.
Exactly. We are motivated by a single, critical, overriding question in almost every interaction we have. It is the filter through which we view the entire world. In marketing, it's an acronym. YIFM.
What's in it for me?
What's in it for me? Now, when people hear that, it sounds cynical. It sounds like human beings are inherently selfish and greedy. But we have to view this through the lens of evolutionary biology, not morality.
Right. It's about survival.
It is a survival mechanism. Our brains are constantly, obsessively scanning our environment, evaluating stimuli and asking, does this help me survive? Does this hurt me? Does this conserve my limited energy? Does this elevate my social status within the tribe?
So when a customer lands on your website, their primal brain is aggressively asking, what's in it for me? And if you answer with a space-age aluminum alloy casing, the brain says, that means nothing to my survival or my comfort. Ignore it.
Exactly. The brain discards the information to conserve energy.
Let me try out an analogy here to see if I'm capturing the essence of this.
Please do.
Trying to persuade someone with a list of features is like inviting them to watch a movie, but the main character is completely missing from the film.
Okay, I like where this is going.
If you just list the features, the alloy casing, the chemical compound, the software algorithm, you are essentially showing the audience an empty movie set. You're panning the camera across a beautifully lit, highly detailed room. You can see the props, the lighting, the architecture.
But it's lifeless.
Right. Nobody is in the room. Nothing is happening. There's no plot.
And an empty set, no matter how beautifully constructed, is incredibly boring.
But if you describe the emotional benefits, the profound relief of getting this stressful job done fast, the rush of confidence from looking great, the deep safety of using a durable tool, you are suddenly pulling the customer out of their seat and onto the stage. You are making them the star of the movie.
That analogy perfectly captures the imperative of copywriting. You must write persuasive copy that creates powerful, evocative mental imagery in your prospects' minds. You have to use words that force them to put themselves center stage. You have to visually and emotionally walk them through the satisfaction of their wants and needs before they have even purchased the product.
I want to linger on this idea of mental imagery because I think it's where the actual craft of writing comes in. We aren't talking about hiring a graphic designer to make a nice infographic. We are talking about copywriting.
Mm-hmm.
How do mere words create a biological response and an image in the brain?
Through sensory and emotional triggers. The brain actually doesn't know the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a real one.
Wait, really?
Truly. When you read highly descriptive sensory words, the sensory cortex of your brain lights up as if you were actually experiencing the thing. Let's go back to the drill. A feature-based, data-driven sentences includes a 500 RPM motor.
Yeah, nothing happens in my brain. No image, just a cold number.
Right. Now listen to a benefit-based, emotionally evocative sentence. Imagine sinking a 3-inch screw into solid oak without breaking a sweat, the motor purring smoothly in your hand as you finish building your deck before sundown.
Wow. Okay, that is a completely different neurological experience. I physically felt that. I saw the grain of the oak wood, I heard the low hum of the purring motor, and most importantly, I felt that deep, exhaling satisfaction of beating the sunset and being done with a chore.
You put yourself in the picture. You answered the "what's in it for me" question instantly. The reward is the pride of a finished deck and a relaxed evening with a cold drink.
Yes.
The 500 RPM motor is just the invisible vehicle used to deliver you to that relaxed evening. If you assume the logical substance, the raw RPMs, is enough to win the customer, you will lose the sale every single time to a competitor who knows how to paint the emotional picture.
It's almost like the words are a virtual reality headset. You, as the writer, are writing the code that renders the sensory experience inside the customer's mind.
I love that.
And if you do it right, if you use words like purring, solid oak, sweat, they experience a microdose of the satisfaction your product will eventually give them. And once their brain tastes that microdose, they want the real thing. That's when they click add to cart.
Which brings us, beautifully full circle, right back to the hallway outside Emily Dickinson's room.
Oh, right.
She didn't have a VR headset. She didn't have a website with slick video backgrounds or interactive graphics. He had an open wooden door, the air in the hallway, and her voice.
Yeah.
She lived entirely in a world of imagination, and she had to use words to invite her listeners to step into that world with her. When you sit down to write an email, a landing page, or a product description, you are doing the exact same thing. You are standing behind the digital wall, using words to generate vivid emotional associations.
This is such a profound way to look at business. We've moved from a historical anecdote about a reclusive 19th century poet all the way to fundamental truths about human evolutionary biology, the neurology of trust, and the mechanics of digital commerce. It's a massive paradigm shift.
It really is. If we synthesize everything we've discussed today, if we look at the absolute soul of this concept, it comes down to one core realization.
And what's that?
Successful business communication is fundamentally an act of empathetic imagination.
Empathetic imagination. That is a brilliant phrase.
Think about the entire journey we've mapped out. You are standing behind a digital wall. Your customer cannot see you. They can only see the text you render on their screen. You're using nothing but words to project a persona that must remain rigorously, obsessively consistent across every single touch point so that the primal part of their brain can trust you.
No gutter snipes.
Right, no gutter snipes. But here is the master key. Instead of using that trusted persona to talk about yourself or to stroke your own ego about the technical specifications of your product, you are using that voice to paint an emotional, benefit-driven picture.
You're pulling them onto the stage.
Exactly. You are using your empathy to deeply understand what the customer truly desires on a human level: safety, status, relief, and your imagination to describe it so vividly that they step into the picture. You are creating a digital universe where the customer is the absolute center of gravity.
And when you achieve that level of empathetic imagination, the digital wall just completely disappears. You aren't a faceless phantom anymore. You aren't a corporate gutter snipe. You become a trusted guide, standing right next to them, helping them get exactly what they want out of life.
That is how you turn words into trust, and trust into a thriving business.
Before we wrap up this deep dive, I want you, the person listening to this right now, to think about one final provocative idea.
Let's hear it.
We started by talking about Emily Dickinson's single photograph, that silver daguerreotype taken when she was just 18 years old. It froze her visual identity in time. For the rest of her life and for over a century after she died, that static image was the only visual reference the world had of her.
Right.
Today, our modern daguerreotypes are our profile pictures, our brand logos, our carefully curated avatars. We freeze our visual identity in time, just like she did. But here is the difference. While that picture is frozen, static, and unmoving, your words are alive.
Very true.
Your copy is working for you right now, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, speaking through the digital door to thousands, maybe millions of people at once, even while you sleep. So I want you to ask yourself right now, thinking critically about your own website, your own emails, your own social media presence, are your words currently building a bridge that invites the customer to step onto the stage and become the hero? Or are they just a cold, silent wall made of dry features, ego, and self-serving jargon?
It is the most critical audit any creator or business owner can perform.
But wait, there's a massive wrinkle in all of this. We established today that everyone is motivated by why, what's in it for me. We know we have to paint the picture, but human beings are incredibly complex and they process information differently.
They absolutely do.
How do you write a single page of copy that answers that question when your audience is made up of drastically different personalities? What if one segment of your audience desperately wants the emotional story, but another segment actually does demand the hard data before they feel safe?
It's a huge challenge.
How do you speak to the analytical mind and the emotional mind at the exact same time without breaking character or sounding like a gutter snipe? That is a fascinating, complex puzzle, and it's exactly what we will be tearing apart next time as we dive into the advanced strategies of writing for specific personality profiles. You absolutely won't want to miss it.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.